sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone. The good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful. But we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want.
What's going on, everybody? This is Chris again. Welcome back to another episode of the Yamanote in Tech and Society. I'm your host, Chris, and I'm here basically talking to you on a Wednesday, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that intro. I was looking at a lot of the different introductions I got on other podcasts, and I was like, I wanted to be a little bit, I guess, like a little bit unique and not be too, just I not to be too cliche. But this utilizing that particular clip came from the movie called The Great Dictator. It was basically a movie, written by Charlie Chaplin. It was one of the scenes from that particular movie, and it's pretty old, like a black and white. It used to be a silent film. And the music that was in the background comes from the Philosopher's Mixtape Part 1, or I think it's Philosopher Mixtape 1, and that's on YouTube. And that guy mixed Chillstep music with like great speakers, and such as Alan Watts, Neil deGrasse Tyson, I forget the guy, Richard McKenna, and for instance, one of those clips I also use for the outro for my last week's podcast. So, but before we get started, I'm just gonna talk a little bit about what I've been doing and how how tonight's gonna be going. I'm just gonna try to break it down like I always do in just smaller chunks that you can always look at, and categorize for whatever you need it for. So, for instance, tonight we're gonna talk a little bit more about the books I've recently read. And the audiobooks that I also supplemented when I wasn't able to actually hold a physical book in my hand. That's gonna be a Permanent Record by Edward Snowden, and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Convey. And that's the current book I'm reading, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the book I finished. And with that, I'm also going to focus more on the new technology I'm using to actually run this podcast, and some of the ideas I had to build out some of the web content so that way I can use it across different platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, just regular, YouTube vlogging on YouTube and whatnot. I'm also playing a few games. I also wanted to go ahead and to play some of the latest games. I think it's Call of Duty Modern Warfare has came out, and I wanted to kind of use that as a way to, just go back to, when I was playing the very first. No, I think it was Modern Warfare 2 back with Xbox. I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, and also, doing all this between work has been okay too. I might speak a little bit more about that, and we'll see how far I actually get. Within the 30 minutes, I want to be able to be more efficient with my time. So I'm gonna take a break, and we'll be back in a minute. All right, so yeah, this is basically going to start out with what I was speaking about before. So if you were one of the few who gets the newsletters by any chance, make sure you always leave an email, or you can ping me by however you basically me, because if you're listening to this podcast, you have to know me personally. It's not like as if it's like, even though it is on public Wi-Fi. I mean, even though it's in a public domain, doesn't necessarily mean that you you might have stumbled upon it. If you did, welcome. Say hi. You can. I'm trying to figure out how I wanted to make the how I wanted to make the public be able to contact me. There's a voice message system that is on Anchor FM that allows you to leave messages for me. If not, you can always use email, which is ksamuel.chris@gmail.com for right now. And it makes sure that, you leave in the subject, line, the name of the podcast, and maybe the episode you listen to, and maybe even a little bit about yourself, and it's that way I can say, hey, so and so from blah blah blah, basically listen to this episode about this, and we can all just continue to just talk and be able to share information about whatever. And so I want to basically start out today with the newsletter that I was busy in, because the newsletter is where I try to every week to take everything I learned all the week and break them down into smaller chunks, and to kind of practice writing and constructing information content for people by email. Email is one of the methods I'm trying to use to promote myself and to share my information I know and learn and stuff. And I also, in my email, if you want to be a part of that email, you can always leave an email at me at ksamuel.chris@gmail.com. And for right now, I'll be using that email to do this. Maybe later on, I'll start having an official, I don't know, podcast, web email. But for right now, I'm using that one because it just keeps everything organized. The going back to the email, I just talk about how I'm actually trying to put things together each week. Then I talk a little bit about the how the podcast is going, what went on during the last podcast. I try to break down like things I've read, things I've watched. I also share links from YouTube channels that I've actually listened to. And I also go over some of the things that I'm trying to overcome, things I've did, what I did last week, what I'm doing this week, and what I wish to do next week. And to also, allow some time to talk to people about anything that maybe I felt that somebody asked me a question about that I felt that was so important that I can share with everybody else. And this is just a way to do these things. So if you remember that last week I was talking about some of the podcasts I originally started listening to, which was we call it Hedo Flum Japan with Richard Pavic. I think I'm pushing his last name, but I remember he's an expat, still lives in Japan today. Been working as a salary man and expat salary man, and he just talks about himself, like living in Japan, his family and stuff like that. And I really liked being able to listen to him on the podcast. And it was basically just podcast. He had some YouTube videos, and he also had some email and a website just to drop your thoughts, like to be able to go back and see how like what you were thinking about and what you were doing. It really helps with organization and how you manage things. I feel like we need to get everything out of our head and stop trying to do it. You don't have to do that anymore. We can, if you keep a diary, this is like way easier to keep than a diary. I mean, you could just literally talk about it on your way to work, which is what Rich did. He actually strapped a microphone with a camera pointed at his face on his way to work every day. And his commute was like 2 hours or 3 hours. And he would like basically go from like, I forget what town he's from, his family's from, but he was going to Tokyo. I think it was 2 hours. And he would just rant about things and all types of stuff, like speaking Japanese, trying to be friends with people in Japan at his work, how his work is about, how people looked at him weird with the camera strapped to him like that. And it was just on and on and on and on and on. And he just dumped it online on this podcast and video cast. And I look at it now because he stopped for a while, and then he went ahead and he did like a revisit, like where his son is like 17 years old now, or maybe even more. Oh, I think it's like 17 years old now. And it's just funny. They're like, oh, I know him. Like I don't know him, but like you could just see that like growth of it. And I just really think that that's important. I mean, we don't really have the time these days to like sit down and blah 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 with our family and friends, all the time. So you can always, maybe say what you want to say in your podcast or in your email, and not just you don't have to use like Facebook all the time. I mean, we don't really do that, type of like direct, you know, content creation, but he did it in a way where, I understood like him being an expat, being from, I think he's from America, and he lived in Japan. Like he was teaching Japan, but now he works for like a company. Going back to the podcast guy, he talked about these things. So I thought that was great for him to do things like that, and I'm glad everything seems to be okay with him, and it's just like another life out there, living life, doing things. You don't get a chance to really express yourself the way you want to, and I'm really excited to actually finally do my own, because I don't know why. I think it has a lot to do with my age. Like I'm gonna be 37 next month, and it's so weird to understand that being 37 is like, wow, what the hell happened to the time, you know? And yeah, so stay tuned. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go and try to, like, I already spent like 7 minutes now. I don't have that much time. I'm gonna go into talking a little bit more about the book, and also with the podcast, how I'm basically, putting things together. All right. Hey guys, if you basically listen to any of the books or movies I basically talk about on the show, I want you to basically take some time to actually sign up for Curiosity Stream or try out Audible. These applications provide services like movies and videos and audiobooks that allows you to kind of keep up with, a lot of things in life that possibly doesn't necessarily connects with you. I'm not necessarily sponsored by them or anything right now, but I do think that you should try to look up for those things. So that's basically Curiosity Stream or Audible or even Skillshare, which is basically I have the Skillshare subscription that actually helped me learn how to create a podcast. Every day, I listen to a few videos from several different video creators, or what they call Skillshare calls instructors, about creating a podcast or editing movies or editing videos. And you can get this information on YouTube, but you can't really get like detailed information or detailed knowledge about it, from someone who's actually working on these videos, like specifically. So try it out. So that's Skillshare.com, Audible.com, or CuriosityStream.com. Okay, so what I wanted to go ahead and talk about was the book, and I wanted to really go over it. And that's basically just really finished last week the book Permanent Record by Edward Snowden. I don't know. I think I spoke about Edward Snowden. He's he was a contractor for several NSA, USCIS, CIA government, and he was exiled. Well, he's in exile in Russia right now after being I guess not. How he was basically put on the the I don't know. Oh wait, I'm trying to figure out how to basically say this without. Okay, so he stole information that he felt was necessary for the world to know, and that's called a whistleblower. And a whistleblower, he's basically considered a whistleblower who now lives in exile in Russia, as he tries to tell the world what his like what we need to pay attention to about our privacy. and I think it's a really good book. I mean, I watched the Edward Snowden movie, and it's he's now the internet is very very robust, is more robust than it was, but back in 2016 or 17 when the movie came out, or even 13 when his thing went off. But I feel like now the book. I mean, now the book really goes into his life and like how Edward Snowden grew up, and it's very weird. Like he grew up with interested like around he's like relatively the same like around age as me, but he spent a lot of time with books and games and computers. The only thing about him that I necessarily didn't really gravitate with was like his whole entire family was in the army. Not in the army, in the working for the government. And the book is really great when you don't know if you don't know anything about technology. It's really easy for you to read. He kind of breaks things down into like how he went from school to try to go to college, to go to the army, to how he got his first contracts, to how he learned how to do all types of stuff. And then he ended up becoming like a spy for the American government and stuff like that. And this is a really cool book. And if you're not really able to read the book, I'm pretty sure you can Google YouTube channels where he's on other podcasts, and he was on Comedy Central's Trevor Nova, and he talked about the book, via telecom over video, because he's not able to enter the country because of his his exile. So I really think that book is a great book to read. I mean, I always like listening to people who are considered like outliers, people who people are really difficult to understand. So I would definitely go ahead and pick it up. If not, you could always listen to one of the many podcasts or interviews on YouTube right now. He's pretty much trending. And the other book is The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. That's what I'm basically right now. I think I'm on chapter 4 about the principles of. Let me bring it up. The principles of habits, or basically, he is principles of. Yeah, oh, forgive me. Basically, went ahead and I want to make sure I have like some of a clip from the book real quick. So basically it's principles of personal vision. So it's like part 2 of the book right now. It's about, and he goes over certain things about how how our interdependence upon people is important in our lives. So like we think that it's all that we have to become independent from people, that but interdependent, meaning that how our circle of influence is very important. I'm just gonna like play a little clip so you can just like hear like from just not from the beginning, but just from here. Just 1 second.
Questionable ability of man its value to elevate his life by conscious endeavor. As you read this book, try to stand apart from yourself. Try to project your consciousness upward into the corner of the room and see yourself in your mind's eye reading. Can you look at yourself almost as though you were someone else? Now try something else. Think about the mood you are now in. Can you identify it? What are you feeling? How would you describe your present mental state? Now think for a moment about how your mind is working. Is it quick and alert? Do you sense that you are torn between doing this mental exercise and evaluating the point to be made out of it?
Yeah, that's just like a little clip right there, and like I honestly like this story. I mean the book. Dr. Stephen Covey really spends time breaking down the 7 habits into these storylines about how our lives really clearly depend on our interactions with others, our influence of others, being empathetic. And it's something that I've always known. It's not like I didn't know this, or I didn't realize that this was important. I just felt that it was something everybody knew, and we just assumed we weren't gonna play nice. We were gonna sit back and just let let the world just do what they want with us, but to actually hear, this man talk about it and not be at the pulpit at church, or to be, he's not selling it in a way where people are making money clearly on like what he says, like verbatim. He he serves everything out by like how he actually practices his stuff with his family, and I and there's just a lot of things that you can really get from that. And it's not the only book. There's other books too that I've read, but I really do like how that book, pretty much starts out. And I talk a little bit about it in my newsletter. And I hope that if anybody has a chance to read it or has read it, please, let me know, because I would like to go ahead and, talk a little bit about the book and how it actually, um, makes me think about, the way I treat other people. Because I've always struggled with, you know, thinking about others, when meaning like, when people, like, you have people who you care about, people you feel like you can work with, but you don't really have always that same energy for everybody, meaning like, maybe like you have some people that you don't like, or your boss is, up your butt or something, or you don't like, talking to certain people. And we have to understand, we have to like learn how like everybody can connect with everybody if we work together, and think about, that those persons have weaknesses, and it just makes me think about everything I've been listening to about society and how we need to work together and how everything's related. And so I definitely want to spend more time with it. So yeah. So all right, so let me go ahead and take a little break, and I'm gonna go ahead and talk a little bit more about the setup for this podcast. All right, so here at the end of the show, I just want to basically talk about what's going to happen next week. So during the week, I'm going to spend more time trying to break down the things I'm looking to do with the show. I'm going to try to find more things to talk about. I'm going to also make more accounts connected to this. Like, I have a Twitter already, and I also have like a Instagram, and I want to basically make other accounts for it, like maybe have like a LinkedIn, like, page for it, and just talking about building your brand and businesses, and why having type of information like this is so important, because of the fact that when you're listening to yourself online, you want to be able to have people find things about you. It's really important to do that. Not because that you have like something so important to say, but maybe you might have something to say. Maybe it could be something interesting that you might know that somebody else doesn't know. Bill Nye, Science Guy, always used to say, especially in his book on Undeniable, and he basically said everybody always knows at least one thing you don't know. And there could be something that that could help someone else, but we have to be able to understand that we're in a world of Google and search engines alike, and being able to spend time sharing information. It will start out with basically setting up your information as a form of a question, and being able to get people to listen to you as a content creator. So next week, hopefully I'll have the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People done. There's another book called Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, and he talked about it on Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu. I think I'm saying his name wrong. Bilal. I don't know how to say his name properly, but it was Tom. He basically does a lot of like motivational videos, and he tries to help people to become their best version, as well as many others. But I listened to that, and I really wanted to kind of spend more time, addressing that book, Simon book. Simon was basically was an interviewee on the show. So yeah. The other thing is that I actually started to look up another Skillshare tutorial about using like my camera. Like, I have a DSLR camera I bought when I was in Japan, and I kind of used it here and there, but I don't feel like I'm very good at it because of the fact that it's just so many things on the book, and I try to use it to. I read it in English and in Japanese to try to figure out certain things, but I feel like I want to know how to be more advanced with it. So I actually started to look online for like a better camera lens. There's a YouTuber whose name is D for Darius, and he's really good at talking about the things you need as a filmmaker. And for me, I just want to make. I would like to be able to, you know, create more content that's more creative. When I first went to school, I went to school for like graphic design and web design and probably desktop publications was really big back then, but it was really hard to get all the things I needed. But now it feels like it's just booming, and so I'm just gonna go ahead and just leave it at that. And also, I'm thinking about maybe setting up a calendar, like a Google Calendar. Each week, I will like leave like events of like every single episode, which day the episode is going to be, and what's going to be about that episode. And hopefully, I can get people who are interested in like attending the episode can also subscribe to that calendar. So that way, they'll know, when the next episode is going to be available. And I can also help me also get people who are also interested in being on the show would know when it's actually going to be, because I'm thinking about having like a live session of the podcast sometime around Thanksgiving or Christmas, and I want to spend more time to address that to the fans or people who are following. And in order for me to do that, you need to be able to have some sort of like calendar so people can invite and can keep people updated. And with that, I think that's going to be it. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope that everything I talked about was great. If it wasn't, please let me know. Always email me at samuel.chris@gmail.com, and or you can also go ahead and you can contact me on the Twitter. I got the Twitters too, and Twitter is at Yamanote. So that's Yamaote. And talk to you later.
There is no way. One fine day you realize to your astonishment, there is no way at all of having your mind anywhere else but in the present moment. Because even when you think about the past or the future, you're doing it now, aren't you? And that results in a very curious transformation of consciousness. You feel that the present moment is flowing along and carrying you with it all the time. Just like the flow of the Tao. The flow of the Tao is what we would call the flow of the present. See? And you're with it. There's no way of being anywhere else. The Jungyong, the book called The Unwobbling Pivot, says the Tao is that from which one cannot deviate. That from which one can deviate is not the Tao. Or to put it into the form of a Zen story, the master Joshu said to Nansen, "What is the Tao?" Nansen replied, "Your everyday mind is the Tao." Joshu asked, "How do you get into accord with it?" Nansen replied, "When you try to accord, you deviate."